This is the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Matthew 24 and 7. For nation shall rise against nations, and kingdom against kingdoms. There shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Wakakadash. Double honors to the elders, apostles, of Great Millstone, preaching His word truthfully and sincerity. And shalom to the Hakim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Hakim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, that be like unto the speckled bird, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And I say shalom to you Hakim out there. And this is a news article that I just brought out for CNN that just caught my eye, caught my attention. This is in the news on this July the 4th, 2022, on this Monday noon at 12:46 p.m. Central Standard Time. And the highlight of this news article, and it reads from CNN, was posted on MSN.com, and it reads, U.S.-Iran tensions could heat up this summer. The United States and Iran could be heading for a summer of further escalations after indirect talks to restore the 2015 nuclear deal ended without any progress. The talks between the mediator of the European Union and the host of Doha, Qatar, were the latest, hoping getting both sides to come to an agreement as tensions grow around Iran's program growth. Right, because that's the uranium, that's the increase of uranium of nuclear capability is being increased by Iran. I believe it's increased up to 60%, I believe, from the last time I heard from the watchdog that covers that situation over there in Iran of the Iran nuclear facility, as they constantly creating uranium of nuclear capability. And they're gonna increase it even more and more these last days, you know. Even if it's no progress of the 2015 nuclear deal, because I did a video on this in regards to this on Saturday, I believe, and now it's Monday. Now it's basically like an update to this, you know. They were saying the potential tensions between Iran and the United States is going to furthermore increase after they had a little meeting on both sides of show no signs of progress, no signs of progress of the nuclear deal, of the potential trying to revive the 2015 nuclear deal. So the talks were no progress at all. And then you already have the tensions increasing even more than ever between Iran and Israel, you know, because the United States and Israel, they allies with one another. And another thing, keep in mind as well too, that Israel doesn't favor of the United States trying to come to an agreement with Iran of the 2015 revival of the nuclear deal, you know. And Israel still look at Iran as a threat to their country and to the world as well too, and potentially of the United States as well too, you know. So these tensions is gonna escalate even more and more, you know. I wouldn't be surprised if the United States and allies that's with the United States and with Israel as well too use more hard economic sanctions on Iran, because they still creating their nuclear arsenal and nuclear capability as well too, because the Heavenly Father is going to stir up these Persians to get back into that mode of world war, you know, along with the Russians as well too, you know. So I'm continuing on with the reading, and it says the The two-day talks were aimed at resolving the remaining issues between the United States and Iran. A senior American official said talks had been going backwards, but Iran's foreign minister Hassan Ahmed Abdullah said Saturday that the path to diplomacy is open and described the negotiations as positive. It says Iran's deputy foreign minister, a top nuclear negotiator, Ali Bakri Karim, said on Sunday that the time and place for the next round of talks or negotiations are being finalized. But as talks falter, Iran's inch closest to the amount of enriched uranium, right? Like I just mentioned, yeah, the increase of the uranium of creating a nuclear bomb or a nuclear hypersonic missile, long range, short range, mid range. It says, but as talks falter, the Iran closer to the amount of enrichment uranium necessary to build a nuclear bomb and reducing the cooperation with the United Nations on the nuclear watchdog, like I mentioned before, the prospects of its adversaries resorting to military options deteriorate in its nuclear capability. The CNN spokesperson Ali Alvarez, an Iran project director at the crisis group and think tank in Washington, D.C. about what may happen next. Since the talks ended without any progress, how it's likely it's escalating going forward and what that will look like. One thing certain, no deal, no crisis dynamic is not sustainable. With so much friction between Iran and Israel and their respectable region allies, there is plenty of space for deliverance or unintended escalations that might spiral out of control. All this is likely to turn the summer of 2022 into one similar that is quite similar the summer of 2019 when tensions flared up in the forms of tightened sanctions and attacks on international lanes in Gulf Arab state infrastructure, bringing Tehran and Washington perilously close into an open conflict multiple times during the course of just a few months. The only difference now is that due to the ongoing dialogue between Iran and Saudi Arabia, as well as the United Arab Emirates, and the arenas of competition is likely to shift. It says, does the lack of progress in oil means the deal is dead? Not necessarily. Failure is the zone could turn diplomacy with Iran into a zombie process for a while, but both sides will return home and will likely engage in mutual escalations in the hopes that the other side will eventually blink first. But as we get closer to midterm congressional elections, that the Biden administration appetite for a deal could be diminished. The problem is that the Democrats are bound to lose control of Congress in November, which is coming up, which turn is going to diminish Iran's interest in dealing with a lame duck administration that no longer control Congress. What's next? The Iranians will likely to decide to postpone the deal until the U.S. presidential election in 2024 with the leverage intact, but the Iranians have their own presidential election in 2025. So yeah, I ain't gonna read all the rest of that, but you know the deal. But yeah, these tensions between the United States and Israel could furthermore increase, because like I mentioned before, with the Iran and Israel increasing their tensions between one another. So yeah, it's gonna further escalate even more and more. Because these wars and rumors of wars, it's increasing even more than ever, And we're we're definitely living in the book of Revelations as well too. Because these are the signs of the times. And with the Iran's uranium nuclear capability, can be able to create a bomb. They have hypersonic missiles, the long range, short range. They got ICBM missiles as well too. Even if they do try to have some progress, because the deal is a dead end standstill right now at the moment, because both sides haven't made any progress, and that could further heighten tensions between the U.S. and Iran. But basically, the tension is going to escalate even further, more and more between Iran and Israel, and especially tensions over there in the Middle East. Even if they have allies or not, it's still going to be tensions increasing, especially in the parts of the Middle East with the Syrian border. Between Israel and Syrian border, you're going to still have consistently increasing tensions rising over there. You're going to have tensions more in Syria because Russia, they stationed there, and back allies as well too with the Turkey operation in Syria. So you're going to have these tensions increasing and escalating even more and more and more, and it's going to get to a point it's going to be verbally, it's going to be, and, tension's going to increase further even more and more, in the last days, And I'm going to read Revelations 11 and 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly. Right, because we're entering in the stages of these tensions and building up and escalating even further, even more and more. Even though it might have times and tensions might calm down between the nations, but it's going to increase even more and more and more. Like I mentioned again, it's going to be a verbal standpoint between the nations going against one another verbally assaults economically wise, and it's going to get physical as well too. Like I mentioned in all my other previous videos that I mentioned, the tensions and hiding have been increased more than ever with these nations doing. I've been covering stories, been doing sit down lessons in my previous videos from last year all the way into now. These nations gearing up, preparing for war. That's why you're seeing these nations developing nuclear missiles, testing their missiles, hypersonic missiles, the long-range, short-range anti-missiles, full exercise military drill, joint exercise military drills. That's all you've been seeing, The South China Sea increasing, tensions in Yemen, tensions at Iraq, tensions in Syria, tensions in Lebanon. Even though they going through economic crisis over there in that region, you're seeing the cross border conflict between the IDF, the Israeli aggression against the Syrians over there in that region, because I believe they targeting Iran-backed militaries. They use airstrikes over there. So yeah, tensions definitely been increasing. And I believe there was another story 2 days ago I believe it was on Saturday, I had reported that did a lesson on Hezbollah did like some air drone strikes. And then I believe Israel, they had did a counterattack on that. They did some airstrikes to destroy some drones or whatever. So you got tensions building up. And the tension is going to increasingly build up between Iran and Israel, because Israel look at Iran as a big adversary, and Israel doesn't want the United States to have any discussions of a revival of the 2015 nuclear deal, because Israel still figure if they do show progress on it, if they do get a deal done, that's still not going to change the fact that Israel is still going to look at Iran as a main threat. That's why you've been seeing Israel building up their military arsenal, doing these trainings, these exercise drills, simulation type drills on their adversary of Iran, because they'd be fully prepared and ready if they have more threats or a potential war between Iran. They'd be fully prepared. Along with Iran, they'll be fully prepared as well too, because both sides will be fully prepared against one another. So that shows you the increase of these tensions between the nations. The nations shall rise against nations and kingdom against kingdoms, and it's heating up more than ever. Now, I mentioned before, tensions might calm down, but it's going to escalate even more and more than ever. And I'm going to read it again for edification's sake of this sit-down lesson. Revelations 11:14. The second woe was past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly. Right, third woe coming quickly. Just like the second woe passed, now we ain't entering the stages and the processes of things entering the third world's war. That's what we're seeing. So with that, I hope this lesson was edifying through the spirit, power, grace, and mercy of Yahweh Yahushua. And first and foremost, I'd like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Wakar Kadash. Double honors to the elders, apostles, a great millstone, preaching this word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, that be like unto the speckled bird, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And shalom to the Akim, scattered through the four corners of the globe, preaching the word truthfully and sincerely. And until next time, I will say shalom and a ball.